Yes, I have been the president of a small country of 2 million people for 4 years, and now I'm a member of parliament. And I am a chairman of National Security Commission. That means I supervise secret services. And now I'm telling that because most of my life I have been an orthopedic surgeon. And the questions of human communication, the questions of birth, life, and death are very important to me myself, and that's my experience. So, a lot of experiences in one person. So, I'm here today to speak about the challenges of cultural diplomacy. If people expect that there are no challenges, that it's a highway to happiness and success, we all know that that's not true. And I'll come back just for some definitions of what's culture. One of the definitions is it is a total of inherited ideas, beliefs, values, and knowledge which constitute the shared basis of social action. And there are a few keywords in this definition. It's inherited. We inherit something from our families, from our teachers, from our religions, and from our nations. And we really constitute a shared basis for common action. That's how we act in the society, whether it's a society of our city or whether it's a global society. It doesn't matter. It's a fundamental basis for our actions. And the second definition is slightly different. Culture is total range of activities and ideas of group of peoples with shared traditions which are transmitted and reinforced by members of the group. And now and this statement has totally different keywords. Okay, we have one common keyword, sharing, which is a very important word. But we have activities and ideas which are transmitted and reinforced by the members who belong to that group. And I think in the diversity of our group being in this room is clearly visible. Because these statements reveal an evidence that there is a number of cultural groups which is huge and more precisely to say uncountable in our global world. And I will say that the smallest group is each individual. And if you think in the category that each individual has its own culture, that's right. How the person behaves, what are the moral categories he really is following, how he dresses, how he communicates, how he expresses himself. This is a microcosmos of culture. And the opposite end is a global culture. And what's global culture? It's really a trend of the 21st century. Why? Because more and more societies are more free, more traveling all over the world, nothing to say about the internet, social networking, and we are communicating to each other. And right now we are creating the global culture. Global culture, and this process will never end until we will be all with the same faces, with the same dresses, with the same thoughts, and nothing to discuss. That's the end of the globe. You all know that. But we have to also understand that this reality, these cultural groups, nevertheless, there are high culture groups, subculture groups, internet culture groups, ethnic culture groups. I can count and count and know that's many, many, many. Then in many cases, they overlap each other, sticking together. Let's take a very simple example of today's discussion. 3 speakers. What was common for the first and the second speaker? Did you realize that? They were both rectors of universities. Something common. I would say that's university culture, and you have to agree with me. What is common with the second and the third speaker? The third is myself. Physicians. And I'm very happy to say that I really like the speech of my previous speaker, because that's 100% how do I think, because we are both physicians. Our ideas, values, knowledge are the same. And that's right. So, and we have to really understand and accept that all these multiple cultures in the multicultural world, if people say there is no multicultural world, that's absolutely wrong. It's a multicultural world, and we interfere with each other as individuals, as groups, and we share what was mentioned before, the ideas, the values, the traditions, and the knowledge, all the best we have. And that looks the best scenario. But the next question is, what's in the reality? Is this best scenario working everywhere, including this room? And perhaps we have to be very frank with ourselves, not yet. It's not yet the case. Because we still declare, a little bit communicate, but not too much listen and try to understand. And that's reality. But in the last 100 years, the nation state is the most substantial player in the global relationship. And only in the last decades, international organizations start to play more role in global affairs. And maybe the European Union, which I represent, is one of the cases that the nation states are trying to put the efforts together, create new cultural identity, new political identity, new identity which would be an example for the others. But we are still in Europe on the way. But one of the most characteristic features of the nation state is its cultural identity. There is no nation state which is not claiming that their natural cultural identity is the most important for them, even more important than economic interests. And that's also true. So it's inevitable that every nation state, and I here play the role of a politician, uses cultural diplomacy in its foreign policy. And it is true. And even more, in the case of multi-ethnic states, the nation state uses the cultural policies, or let's say cultural diplomacy, or diplomacy's elements, in their internal affairs. There's no other way to do that. And now we come to the conclusion that the cultural diplomacy maybe is one of the strongest tools of making the world better. Make the communications better, make the understanding better. But what are the goals of the nation-state politicians when they try to use their cultural diplomacy? Of course, at first is to inform and present their own culture, their own identity, and say, look, here I stand, I'm Latvian, I'm proud of that. Nothing to say that that's a 2 million nation, but I'm proud of that. And I want to present who I am, what I think, what are my values. That's good. The second is to create an interest in the counterpart. Are you interested in me? Not yet, or already yes? People, some say yes, some say no. Good. That's only the starting point. Then it's very important to create a positive attitude. What I'm doing here, I'm creating a positive attitude from you to me, myself, and to my country, and to my culture. And that's why I'm here on this stage. And of course, the next is to increase the contacts between the individuals, peoples, nations, politicians, to really talk to each other and to use this cultural diplomacy as a tool, because if you have contacts, you have business. If you have business, you have profit. If you have profit, the welfare is going up. You're better off. And this is the, let's say, pragmatic part of policies. So I talked a little bit about the positive scenario, the most positive scenario. But I have to say a few words about the negative scenarios and what we can do to make more positive outcomes than negative ones. in our activities, because we are here all because of goodwill. We want to make the cultural relations and understanding between the people better. But this is also a goodwill of leaders, political leaders of the countries, the culture lovers, really who love the culture, people as a whole, and each individual. Goodwill and readiness to share, as well as to accept, is the fundamental principle to have a success in cultural diplomacy. Of course, you need activities, projects, events like that we are here today, and somebody who creates these projects. And we have to really accept the readiness to listen and accept and enjoy at the end the different cultures which are not of yourself is the most important. That's I'm happy you are listening. And of course, it should be two-way. The previous speaker said the same. It should be two-way process. If one counterpart only declares and represents and advertises himself and is not going to listen to the other part, or the other part is just silent, no activities, there's no success. Then it becomes from cultural diplomacy with a positive effect to a soft power demonstration. It is also said by the previous speaker. And really at the end, we all need responsibility about these processes. That we must not only understand, that we must be involved and we have to contribute. That's most important. But there are also some things we should avoid. And these are things that are present in every meeting I'm participating. And I'm always upset because it's very easy to get rid of these really negative things. The first is, of course, arrogance. And one of my speeches to my nation, I say that we all think the arrogance in financial affairs is, or let's say on a business affairs, is something bad. But we should accept that it's also intellectual arrogance, ethnical arrogance, you know? Arrogance towards the opposite sex. And I can continue. And the most dangerous is that we don't feel this arrogance ourselves. But we can change arrogance to some kind of equality. Big nations, small nations, strong nations, weak nations. Strongest must help the weak. Sure, we have to do that. And if you are arrogant, you really create xenophobia. And you create xenophobia even of big states and of small states. It doesn't matter. They are afraid that something will change their cultural identity. They're afraid that the cultural small states, they say, we are afraid to open up internet because it may change our cultural traditions and so. So somebody has to say that the self-confidence should change this scaredness. It's very important that if the individual or let's say the cultural group feels that their culture is good, and it's good not only for them but also for the others, they should not be afraid. They will not disappear. And of course there is a hatred, because if you try to tell somebody and the other opposite side doesn't listen or whatever, you know, doesn't catch you up in the right way, you begin to hate. If you begin to hate, it creates hateness from the opposite side. It's a never-ending story. Instead of that, you have to put love. I'm really frank. We have to put love. We love each other. And if you love, even if you're so different. Look at the cats and dogs. They're so different, but you put them in one room, they become friends. So, it's possible. And of course, if we have arrogance, xenophobia, hatred, fear, it leads to self-isolation of some cultures. Big or small, it doesn't matter. You have an example of huge countries like China that was in isolation. You can't live in isolation. You have small countries, sometimes with strange democracies, living in isolation. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. So, can we do that? Yes. Now a few words about Latvia, because you need some examples of myself. 2 million people. We have 7 different language minority schools. 1 or 2, it doesn't matter. Each minority has a school and it's financed by the state. And it works. It really works. Because school becomes like a cultural center for the minority. It's very important. Second, we have over than 30 ethnical cultural societies with a yearly cultural festival. It's very important to show, to raise this interest, and then you get the understanding with the people you be. And of course, in the Independence Day, in a Lutheran church, 4 different archbishops from different confessions, that means Catholic, Orthodox, Lutheran, that's Protestant, and Baptist, pray in one ceremony. And the same 7 different other religions are sitting and participating. Every year on the Day of Independence. Very important, very important. And of course, the focus of the cultural diplomacy is always on the neighbors. It's very important to have good relations with neighbors. It's easy in the European Union. We have Sweden, Poland, Germany, Denmark. French is a little bit in a more distance, but usually these, I'll be in 5 minutes. That's right. Of course, you pay attention because you need the contacts, because most of the businesses are around your neighbors. That's always, 70% is in the European Union or our business partners. That's very important. And that's easy in the European Union. It's really easy. Coming from a small nation, only 9 years in the EU, I must say, it's right. But we have another neighbor. It's a different culture. It's Russia. It's already 140 million people. And we have 28% of Russian minority. Should we deal with this situation? Yes, not should, but must deal. And then you have every year, yearly, days on Russian national culture. Every year you have a month of Russian culture. And what's the outcome? Every year, the number of Latvians visiting Russian cultural days is increasing. And every year, the Russian Latvians visiting the Latvian cultural events is increasing. The culture really brings the people together. And now we come to the question, big and small. 140 million culture and 2 million people culture. Are you scared? Yes, a little bit. Because then we have to follow where is the borderline between cultural diplomacy and real soft power and intervening in the other nations' internal affairs. And that's a situation that will be forever, because you don't choose your neighbors. So we have to go on. Now, just only a few words, if 1 minute is left. I'm really always interested in also this Christianity-Islamic question. And I think that people should come together not only to express themselves, because usually it ends up with that everybody is a little bit angry because the other side is not listening. And I found a very good sentence in one of the books of one of the Swedish authors. The question is, Saint Mary is mentioned in Quran more times than in New Testimony. Can you believe that? And that's true, but we don't know that. My example goes as though we don't know that. Neither the Christians nor the Muslims, they don't know that that's sad. That's the same book, the same moral, only slightly different details. And that's what was one of the speeches, that we have to go and look for what is common and to share that, because we can share what's different and we can share what's common. And then one day we will understand that sharing is not only the key word, it's the only key to make the world better if we share ideas, beliefs, values, and knowledge. So thank you much. I hope I was on time.
Excellent. Thank you very much.